Continue, does that say continue?
Yes.
Get your head over.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our program. We have a lot of you here today, so that's really nice to see. Welcome to our presentation in partnership with the University of Toronto Scarborough campus, I would say biology department, for our gut microbiota and healthy living presentation. So this is actually a neat little partnership that we have. This presentation today is going to be led and presented by students from the University of Toronto Scarborough campus, presenting their, I would say, final project for their program. So they're going to be talking about lots of different things for you today. It's going to be, the first part is going to be a presentation, and then there will be some questions asked towards the end. So if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or save them for the end when we'll do our Q&A section. So without any further ado, we'll let our presenters begin their presentation today.
Hello everybody, good afternoon. My name is Hanan. So alongside my group members today, we're going to be talking about gut microbiota and healthy living and how this has an impact on our overall health. So to begin with, you're probably wondering, microorganisms in my body? Well, yes, we have tons of microorganisms, and it's named gut microbiota in particular because a large number of them are found in our large intestines. So we are going to be talking about what is a gut microbiota.
Hi everyone, I'm Siyu and I'm here to introduce what is gut microbiota. The gut microbiota refers to the collection of bacterial, archaea, and eukaryotes, which colonize the human GI tract. It has been estimated that more than 1,014 microorganisms live in the human GI tract, including 10 times the number of bacterial cells as human cells and more than 100 times the quantity of genetic material as a human genome. So how does exercise affect the gut microbiota? The control of the gut microbiota in humans is influenced by exercise and fitness levels. An increase in exercise can enhance the number of beneficial microbial species and enrich the diversity of gut microflora. A cross-sectional study has examined that the professional rugby athletes had a higher diversity of microbiota than those sedentary people. So how the diets affect the gut microbiota? The diets rich in fibers such as fruits, vegetables, lentils, and whole wheat grain products also boost the variety of microbes. The reason is that large intestinal microbiota was influenced by the amount, type, and balance of the main dietary macronutrients. And then there are more and more evidence prove that like the gut health also will increase the ability to assess the psychology stress. When the gut pathogens enter the gut, they can activate the HPA, which is a unit of pressure. So the HPA response in animals given probiotics is reduced.
So, importance of gut microbiota. Our body is a host for these microbes, and they have created a symbiotic relationship to perform various functions within the host. So such functions include inhibiting pathogens, improving our cardiovascular health, supplying nutrients in our body such as acids like shorty fatty acids, and also gastrointestinal immune function. So quite interestingly, also our gut microbiota also has a role in our eating habits because of the hormones and the diversity of the gut microbiota. So as you may now know, that specific kinds of food have an influence on the kind of microfamily that lives in our gut. So for instance, changing your diet from a very strict plant to animal-based diet, this can affect the gut microbiota diversity. So while two people are not identical, this is the same thing as the gut microbiota. They cannot be the same. So that's why it's very unique to every individual that researchers say it's almost like a fingerprint that's unique to every single person. Even though we have this symbiotic relationship with the gut microbiota and the host, there is good and bad bacteria. So the good bacteria, as the name implies, it maintains a very positive impact in our gut, and a bad bacteria does the later. So when you have more, normally the body prefers keeping this in like a good balance, so having more good bacteria than bad bacteria. So when you have more bad bacteria, you're gonna have an irregulatory balance, and this can cause very many negative implications within our health. So our gut microbes are able to communicate with our brain, and this is through a gut-brain axis. Researchers say that our second brain is our gut. It kind of also goes back to that saying that trust your gut instinct. Well, it comes from this like phenomenon of the gut-brain axis. The gut-brain axis is able to send signals to our brain, like neurotransmitters such as serotonin. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that is mostly found in our gut. And this is responsible for controlling our moods and our emotions. So this also has a role in many neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and also depression. Just like Hippocrates said, all diseases begin in the gut. So he did have a good point over there, because there are many diseases that are also caused by this gut-brain axis. When it comes to our immune system, the gut microbiota is able to activate it by breaking down toxic compounds and synthesizing vitamins such as B and K. So these vitamins are only being able to synthesize in our gut microbiomes, and specific kinds of vitamins are not found in food, in our food diet, or even plants and animals. So our gut microbiota is also able to act in the liver to detoxify foreign chemicals as well. The gut microbiota also has an influence on a newborn gut. This is depending on the kind of delivery the pregnant mother chooses to go for. So if she goes for a vaginal natural birth, she's able, the newborn baby is able to have the same gut microbiota diversity as the maternal mother. But if they go through a cesarean C-section, they have less of a diversity of the gut microbiota. And it kind of like throws off the balance in the first few weeks, but it's kind of different from going through the natural birth. As you may already know, the kinds of medicines also affects the microbiota. It also has a role in affecting the response activity and the bioavailability of the drug itself.
Okay, so hello everyone, my name is Neil, and we've already established before that our gut provides us with many valuable functions when it is functioning normally. So now I'm going to go over what happens when that is not the case and all the progression of diseases that can emerge when your gut microbiota is thrown out of balance. All right? So first, I'm going to introduce you to just one term, dysbiosis. Dysbiosis is the state in which populations of various bacteria and microorganisms in your gut are thrown out of the typical natural balance that they're supposed to be in. And when this happens, this can be either temporary or chronic, which means long-lasting, depending on what exactly was the cause of the imbalance. And basically, it's an alteration in the proportion of the good bacteria in your gut and the bad bacteria in your gut. And I'm going to go over a few ways of how that can happen in the first place. So Okay, So usually what's usually in the case of less severe instances of dysbiosis is usually caused by an improper diet. One which would be lacking in one nutrient or perhaps an overabundance of another. Like, for example, too much protein or say too much carbs or too much fat and not enough of the other types of nutrients to balance it out. And this makes sense because there's many different species in of bacteria in your gut, as we previously mentioned. And all these different species of bacteria feed off or primarily feed off or preferentially feed off of different nutrients. So if your diet is lacking in one or has too much of another, you will start favoring the growth and the proliferation of certain bacteria over others. And that, of course, obviously leads to imbalance. And another one that is very common cause is alcohol consumption. Aside from also preferentially or differentially feeding different populations of bacteria over other, alcohol consumption can also affect the way in which your normal gut lining and gut immune system interacts with the bacteria in your gut. And another one and these are usually the culprits in cases of severe dysbiosis, is pesticides or antibiotics due to their harsh nature. Pesticides and antibiotics, as you might already know, are chemicals that are, in the case of pesticides, usually unintentional. We end up in our food because their purpose is to kill off other things that we don't want. But they can also, if your veggies or whatever aren't washed properly and you eat them, they could start killing off certain bacteria in your gut. And antibiotics, because even though we usually take them in cases of severe infections in other places in our body, inadvertently they'll end up, of course, killing off some bacteria in our gut or others, because certain strains and species of bacteria in your gut might already have some inherent resistance. So of course that can also throw off the balance. All right. So what can result from this imbalance? Well, in minor cases of dysbiosis, usually that causes, the typical sort of stomach problems that we usually, most of us have probably already experienced in our lives, like, for example, bloating, nausea, stomach aches, things like that. But in the severe cases, they can also lead to chronic conditions, usually chronic inflammation and development of inflammatory bowel syndrome and certain inflammatory bowel diseases. And the most common or the most likely ones that you've already heard about before are ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. And these are all correlated with a lack of a proper functioning gut due to the proper amounts of bacteria in your gut. And one of the leading causes that we discovered due to research is that there's correlation for lack of butyrate producing bacteria in our gut. And what butyrate is, it's a nutrient. For example, it's a sort of a short chain fatty acid. And what it's responsible for is basically regulating your immune system, your immune responses to various either damage or infection. And when you don't, and more specifically, it prevents your immune system from going out of hand. It kind of keeps in check. So if you incur any sort of dysbiosis in which your population of butyrate producing bacteria in your gut is lowered, then you can see that if something else were to go wrong, that would trigger an immune response. That immune response will not be properly regulated. It might go out of control. It might go on for too long. It might never stop, and it might become too severe. All right. And we've already established that various species of bacteria in our gut produce different compounds. So good bacteria produce certain compounds that are beneficial for regular functioning, and then there are other certain compounds that other species of bacteria produce that can be harmful. And often, in the case of inflammation, where the bad bacteria are outnumbering the good bacteria, they produce various compounds that kind of provoke the immune system and they cause damage. And this, of course, can inflame the lining of our gut, which means that basically your immune system is starting to attack things in that area. And also, if certain populations of bacteria are not as high as others, then there's other use, as I mentioned before, parts of your normal functioning that depend on these products that certain good bacteria in your system produce. And when they're not there, things like, for example, the lining of your gut, which acts as a physical barrier between your body and what you eat and what's in your gut, that can deteriorate, and that can allow certain harmful compounds to enter your system, like your bloodstream. And from there, they can make their way to your brain. And this is usually an often overlooked connection between the development of certain diseases in the brain and the health of your gut. And more specifically, how is that these certain compounds, for example, I'm going to name one, lipoprotein, that is usually commonly associated with the bacteria E. coli. I think you might have heard that one before. If it makes it into your bloodstream and gets all the way to your brain, what this compound does is this something called immunogenic, which means that it can provoke your immune system. And when it gets into your brain and around your cells, white blood cells in the area called microglia, they start thinking that there's a problem and they start attacking cells in the area, and that leads to the death of neurons. And the death of neurons is associated with many neurodegenerative diseases, for example, Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. And my colleague will again go into a specific study that overlooks one of these connections.
Hi, so I'm the said colleague. I'm going to be taking you guys through a little study that was carried out by these researchers because they wanted to kind of just look at the relationship between this gut microbiota and patients who have Parkinson's disease. So this study looks at 46 individuals. They were patients at a hospital, and they were all diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And on average, they were 60 years old and had been diagnosed for around 3 to 5 years. So in this study, these researchers wanted to look at the factors that will affect the gut bacteria, and the factors that they wanted to look at were things like diet, water consumption, smoking, and exposure to pesticides. And the way that they kind of measured the gut bacteria levels was they took stool samples from the patients and they analyzed it, and they kind of compared the results of the factors that each of the patients were exposed to the levels of bacteria that was present in their stool samples. So what did they find in this study? Basically, the results of the study kind of concluded that there was higher amounts of certain gut microbiota in these patients with Parkinson's disease. So these bacteria include, and prepare yourselves for some really fancy names, we have Clostridium cluster 4. And this bacteria is kind of related to higher levels of noxious brain metabolites. So basically, it's just something in the body that can lead to neurological symptoms. The next bacteria was Akkermansia, which has been found to be involved in altering the intestinal mucosal barrier. So inside of your intestines, there's like this little barrier made of mucus, and this is called like the mucosal barrier. And this barrier kind of acts like a gate in your gut, and it kind of like lets things that are supposed to be moving like past your gut like to do its thing, but then things that aren't supposed to be moving in and out, it tells them to stop. It doesn't let them through. But when there's higher levels of this Akkermansia present in your gut, this gate kind of becomes a little looser, you know? So it lets more and more things through. So it kind of just starts doing its job a little less. Bifidobacterium is the next one that they found in higher amounts in Parkinson's patients. And this bacteria has been found to be related to reducing the amount of this thing called oxidative stress markers. Oxidative stress markers is a important like kind of flag in your body, and it when this is present, it kind of lets your entire body know that like, hey, something here isn't right. It's related to disease and like the state it's in and how far along the disease is. So when there's higher amounts of this bifidobacterium, there's less amounts of this oxidative stress marker because this bacteria is involved in just not letting too many be present at once, which is a good thing normally. And then finally, the last one is lactic acid bacterium. And this has been found to just be involved in making sure everything in your intestines is kind of balanced, and it plays a role in the immune system of your gut. So all of these taken together, you can kind of see why patients with Parkinson's would have higher amounts of these in their body. They play a role in the pathogenesis of the disease. And so next, they were looking at the factors that I mentioned. So they found that smoking actually didn't have any significant impact on these specific bacteria. The diet, and what we mean by this is like, are they vegan, vegetarian, or are they just eating a normal omnivorous diet? It had a negligible impact. So there was some difference, but it wasn't big enough for it to be considered like an important finding. And then finally, the thing that they found that actually did make the most difference is exposure to pesticides in your food and water. So they found that pesticides or herbicides actually lead to an increased amount of these bacteria in the gut. So of all of these factors, pesticides had the biggest impact, which means that, you know, everyone should kind of just be a little weary of the pesticide intake they're having. Just keep your eye out for it. So yeah.
Hi, my name is Joyce, and I'm here to share some ways or some things we can do to improve our gut health. So one of the things that we can do is to increase the amount of fiber in our diet. As mentioned before, the gut microbiome feeds on fiber. So this means like a fiber-rich diet can help improve gut health by keeping the good bacteria in our gut diverse and healthy. This helps decreases the risk of various metabolic diseases and can help lower the risk of things like colorectal cancer and other heart diseases. Fiber can be found in many fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, beans, and peas, just to name a few. In a 2016 study, it showed that having more fiber to feed the gut microbes can help stop them from eating away at our colon's lining, so thus increasing protection against infection. Another thing we can do is to increase the number of probiotics in our diet. So we can find probiotics in things like yogurt, kefir, aged cheese, sauerkraut, or other fermented fruits. So probiotics are very similar to the healthy bacteria in our gut. So ingesting more probiotics can increase the number of healthy bacteria in our gut, help with the diversity, and can help prevent digestive problems and reduce inflammation. Changing our diet can be very difficult or sometimes not possible depending on our lifestyle or situation. Next slide. Fiber and probiotic supplements do exist and can be an effective way to help with adding more of both into our diet. However, with every supplement, it can have various side effects or clash with things we are already taking. So consulting a doctor can be very important to decide whether or not it's right for you. Another thing we can do to improve our gut health is to decrease the amount of alcohol we are consuming and increase the amount of exercise that we're doing. Alcohol can upset and irritate the gastrointestinal system and overwhelm it, damage it, inflame it as well. It can also negatively affect the liver and other important organs. As CU mentioned before, exercise can be a good way to help with gut health. Various studies have shown that exercise can help with promoting diversity, development, and number of healthy and good bacteria in our gut. Finally, we have already discussed effects of stress and mental health on our gut. Lowering stress and improving our mental health is very important for our gut health. There is a connection between our brain and our gut that many of us may not be aware of. For example, when we are very anxious, we may become nauseous and want to vomit. Or when we're angry, it can cause an upset in our stomach. The gastrointestinal system is very sensitive to how we feel. Sometimes when we think about something tasty, it can trigger our stomach to already feel hungry because our stomach is preparing itself just at the very thought of food. The connection can go both ways, as an unhealthy gut can cause us to feel poorly and also have a negative impact on our mental health, and thus increasing stress. So by focusing on things we love and our loved ones, it can be a good way to improve our gut health, and having a good gut health can also improve the way we feel. So we want to thank you guys for listening to our presentation. We are wondering if any of you guys may have any questions for us.
So if you do have a question, feel free to unmute your mic and ask the group or throw it in the chat and we'll try and get to that. Okay, so we have one in the chat, guys. This is from Barb Nelson. They're asking, with increasing the fiber, should we not also increase water intake?
Okay, so both are important, but specifically fiber is important for our gut microbiota because it helps in like synthesizing acids called shorty fatty acids. And these are energy metabolites that help to provide energy to our body, and it can only be synthesized in the gut. But yes, like water, you have to also take water as well. Just
Yeah,
for
like
yeah.
fiber is important to help you know, kind of boost this gut microbiota activity, but also the recommended like 8 cups of water a day is still something you should be sticking to, and it shouldn't really be altered unless like a doctor or physician specifically says, hey, you need more or less water. So yeah, with more fiber, if you're drinking enough water, you're fine. You don't need to be drinking more.
Hi. What specific foods are best to eat?
Okay, so it could be vegetables. A lot of fiber is really good, as I mentioned earlier. So just keeping an overall healthy diet, it helps to also improve in the diversity of the microbiota as well. Because like if you're eating unhealthy food, rich in lacking any nutrition, you're not really giving your body any nutrition for it to like provide you with like nutrients or even synthesize important things that your body can only synthesize, like vitamin B and K. So just overall having a healthy diet is pretty good.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
We have a couple good ones in the chat. First one is from Judy Carpino. They say, not sure if you can answer this question. However, if your gut is off balance, would that cause bad breath? That's a good one.
Bad breath could be like a sign of like unhealthy bacteria in your GI tract. So in some sense, it can be a sign that your gut is off balance. It also, like, bad breath can also be a sign of like something of a more serious condition. We didn't really look into that, but it does, what you eat and how your gut health is can definitely can give you like bad breath, if that answers your question.
Yeah, so it's not like if you have like bad breath, it's not like 100% because of gut imbalance. Like as Joyce said, it could be due to other like issues in the body, but it's definitely one like symptom that could arise from gut imbalance.
I think I should mention before we go any further that the sort of the opinions being shared today are not necessarily medical advice. So if you
Yes.
are asking for any particular, you know, condition or what to do about your own personal health, I would suggest speaking with your doctor about that. What is being presented today is more so sort of the findings based on the studies of our presenters today. But we do have some really good questions. The other one we have from Kathy Williams is diet pop negatively impacting gut microbiota?
I would say probably not, because diet pop, I'm assuming, usually uses like synthetic versions of sugars, like sugar substitutes, and I don't believe they're highly metabolized by any species of bacteria that I'm familiar with. That I could be wrong. I'm not sure how much research has been done on that, but as far as I could say, probably not. Shouldn't have a major effect.
Yeah,
Of course,
so
certain like synthetic sugars have been reported to be correlated with certain higher incidences of cancer. And again, these often research like that is sometimes disputed. So, but in terms of like gut microbiota and stuff like that, probably not impacting it. But it's not that widely studied.
yeah, so like diet soda, again, with like most things you could consume in moderation, you're fine. It's when it's in excess that, again, because it's not like, the healthiest thing you could drink, it will impact your gut health because we have like a certain number of like nutrients and like minerals and vitamins we need to intake in a day, and water is a big one. So if you're entirely replacing water with diet soda, I'd say, yeah, maybe it could have a negative impact on your gut microbiota, but in moderation, it doesn't have a really significant impact.
Okay. Next up, we have from Jan. What role do PPIs play in gut health?
Okay, so PPIs are helping like ulcers or like acid reflux. So just to like control the amount of acid your stomach is producing. So I wouldn't say it has a direct impact on your gut microbiota, aside from like kind of relieving that acidity. However, if there's any kind of infection like an ulcer, I'm pretty sure that will have to affect the diversity or like the levels of bacteria in your gut. I hope that answers your question.
So we do have a question regarding a particular drug. Again, going back to my previous statement, I would say maybe let's field this one to our general physicians or our actual doctors before we give any advice on that. So I'm going to skip that one. We have another one from Barb. They're asking, can heartburn also be a sign of bad gut issues?
Okay, I'm gonna try answering this question to my best of my ability, but I will say no. But our gut does have a role in just like maintaining cardiovascular health. But as somebody mentioned, PPIs also a kind of, if I'm not wrong, it's a symptom. It's one of the symptoms is heartburn. So it could probably not have be a sign of gut issues or like having gut bacteria.
It could be a symptom of an unhealthy gut, but heartburn can also mean so many different things. So it's kind of hard to really pinpoint if that is necessarily because of a bad gut issue or a heart issue or any other issues, because heartburn is like a symptom that could be related to many different conditions. So it's really hard to say for certain like what's causing it without, knowing other symptoms that you may be experiencing as well.
Yeah, so it can be a sign of bad gut issues, or it could be a sign of just some other gastrointestinal issue.
Awesome. Okay, so we have one more. How can one assess gut health?
The best way to assess gut health and like many health conditions is to see a physician, because that way you know for sure. But a simple thing you can do at home is, it may be kind of gross, but kind of monitor how much you poop or what your poop kind of looks like. Or after you eat, you kind of look at how long it takes for you to feel that you need to poop. So it kind of shows you how long it takes you to digest food. And that might be a sign of how healthy your gut is. If it doesn't feel normal or something's not quite right. Another thing you can do is look up like different kinds of poop online to kind of look at your own and kind of see like, okay, mine's a little bit like more like this versus what a healthier poop might look like, which I know seems kind of gross in some way, but it is a good way to tell like where your gut is at without having to see a doctor every time. If you feel a lot of pain when you go to the bathroom or other things that may be happening that shouldn't be normal, that could also be a sign of how your gut is doing. If you feel like you're bloating a lot or if you have a lot of gas, that also could be certain signs of how your gut is doing.
Yeah, and also as mentioned earlier, due to the gut-brain axis, how our gut also has a connection to our brain, it also plays a role in things like mental health and depression. So if you're feeling like a little slump or kind of feeling anxiety or depression, your gut maybe like could be, having issues. So that's probably something like an area to assess, like to get medication.
Yes, but again, speak to a doctor or physician. We are not trained medical professionals.
Okay, do we have any other questions for our presenters today? Got a lot of good ones so far. In case you have any final burning questions for our team. Great. So with that, we can close our presentation. I want to say thank you very much to our team today for presenting their wonderful findings, as well as everyone who attended our presentation today. A recording of this will be on our YouTube channel for later viewing. So if there's anything that you missed, please check that out. And take good care of your gut health, and we'll see you soon.
Oh, wait, before everyone leaves, we did, well, courtesy of Hanan, she did make you guys a little, I guess, like cliff notes. It's like a little summary of everything talked about here today. So we will be sending that to your host here. And if you would like a copy of that, please feel free to reach out to the Pickering Library and get yourself a little copy so you can forever remember this information.
Yeah, we'll email it out to everybody. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
I'd like to say thank you. Sorry, I'm choking here. Thank you to the team. It was a very interesting conversations.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. It means a lot to us.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for everyone who took